Think you're finally free from someone's control? Think again. Even in silence, they're not done with you. They want things from you you may never see coming. What they crave isn't always attention. It's deeper, darker, and far more manipulative, and it can quietly influence your life even when you've cut contact. If you've ever been ghosted or cut off by someone manipulative, don't assume silence equals freedom. Understand these hidden desires. They're the key to maintaining your boundaries, reclaiming your autonomy, and ensuring you're no longer unconsciously influenced. Take notes, pay attention, and protect your peace. Even when there's no contact, a narcissist's need for validation doesn't disappear. It just shifts into the background, quietly influencing their thoughts and desires. They want to know that they still matter in some way, that their presence, past actions, or influence are still recognized. This isn't about genuine connection or care. It's about ego and the deep psychological craving to feel important and central in someone else's life. Every memory you have of them, every thought that drifts back to past interactions, becomes a form of validation. Even if you're not actively engaging, the mere knowledge that you might think about them or that others might relay information about your life feeds that need. This validation reassures them that they weren't insignificant, that they left a mark, and that their power to affect emotions or outcomes hasn't been entirely lost. In some cases, they may seek indirect confirmation through social media, mutual acquaintances, or other subtle means, always wanting proof that they still exist in your mind. For a narcissist, silence can feel threatening because it challenges this constant validation, leaving a gap where their importance is uncertain. Yet even in the absence of direct contact, their mind creates scenarios in which they are central, imagining your thoughts or feelings about them as a way to maintain a sense of significance. This craving for validation demonstrates that narcissistic influence isn't just about immediate interaction. It's a psychological need that persists even when no one is speaking, guiding their thoughts, expectations, and sometimes even their next moves. Even when contact has stopped, a narcissist's desire for an emotional reaction remains intense. They want to know that you are feeling something because your emotions are a measure of their continuing influence and power. Anger, guilt, frustration, or even longing. Any emotional response is proof that they still occupy mental and emotional space in your life. This craving is not about connection or reconciliation, it's about control. When you feel upset, anxious, or conflicted, it validates the hold they once had and, in their mind, continues to give them leverage even from a distance. Sometimes this desire manifests in subtle ways, such as posting something provocative on social media or leaking information through mutual acquaintances designed to trigger a reaction without direct engagement. In their imagination, your feelings confirm that their presence or their absence is still significant, and that the dynamic of influence hasn't entirely disappeared. Even your efforts to move on or maintain calm are scrutinized mentally because a lack of visible reaction can provoke anxiety or frustration for them. This need for an emotional response shows that control doesn't require ongoing communication. It can persist silently as long as the other person's feelings are still tethered to them in some way. Understanding this dynamic is critical because it reveals that even in no-contact situations, narcissists are still seeking to measure and manipulate your emotional state, and recognizing this helps you maintain your boundaries and emotional independence. Even without direct contact, a narcissist often wants to monitor your life, keeping track of what you're doing, who you're interacting with, and how well you're doing. This isn't about caring for your well-being. It's about maintaining a sense of control and awareness over someone they once influenced. They may check social media profiles, watch updates shared by mutual friends, or follow indirect channels to see how your life is unfolding. Every post, every new relationship, every achievement becomes a way for them to measure their ongoing relevance or impact. In their mind, knowing what you're doing, even silently, helps them feel connected to a world they once had influence over. This monitoring satisfies a psychological need. It reassures them that the other person's life hasn't completely moved beyond their reach, and it allows them to imagine ways to reinsert themselves if desired. Sometimes they interpret your independence or success as a challenge or even a threat, which can stir feelings of envy, anxiety, or the urge to regain influence. Even when you've intentionally created distance, they remain mentally engaged, replaying scenarios, analyzing posts, or thinking about what your choices mean in relation to them. Understanding this helps you realize that no contact is not just about physical or verbal distance, it's about reducing their ability to remain psychologically present. Recognizing that they are secretly observing or imagining your life allows you to maintain your boundaries, protect your emotional well-being, and focus on your own growth without letting their silent scrutiny influence your decisions or self-perception. Even when there's no contact, a narcissist often hopes to influence your decisions from afar. They want the choices you make, your relationships, career moves, social interactions, or lifestyle changes, to reflect in some subtle way their imagined power or past influence over you. This isn't about caring for your success or happiness. It's about preserving a sense of control even without direct engagement. In their mind, your actions are a silent reflection of their importance. They might imagine that you will make choices that align with their preferences, recreate patterns from the past, or avoid moves that could diminish their perceived significance. When you make decisions independently, they may feel challenged or threatened, which can stir frustration or covert attempts to influence indirectly. Even in the absence of communication, they may speculate on your behavior, hoping to confirm that their influence still lingers. This imagined sway over your life allows them to maintain psychological dominance, keeping you mentally tethered without ever speaking a word. Recognizing this dynamic is important because it shows that their interest in your choices isn't about connection, it's about control. By understanding that their influence is often imagined, you can take steps to reinforce your autonomy and make decisions freely without fear of how they might react or perceive your actions. The silence removes their direct leverage, but awareness ensures it doesn't leave you vulnerable to indirect psychological manipulation or self-doubt. Even in complete silence, a narcissist wants to maintain a psychological presence in your mind. They crave the idea that they are still occupying space in your thoughts, even if you are not actively communicating. This isn't about genuine connection or caring. It's about ensuring that their influence, reputation, and perceived importance remain intact. They replay interactions, analyze past conversations, and imagine how you might be feeling, all as a way to keep themselves mentally tethered to you. The goal is to remain central in your internal world without ever having to reach out directly. This need for mental dominance means that even your attempts to move on or focus elsewhere are interpreted and analyzed in their mind. Every memory, every flash of thought about them becomes a form of validation, reinforcing the idea that they are still significant and that their control is not entirely gone. This invisible presence allows them to monitor, manipulate, or anticipate your behavior indirectly, creating a subtle form of influence that doesn't require words or direct interaction. Understanding this dynamic is critical because it shows that no contact doesn't automatically erase their psychological engagement. By recognizing that they seek to maintain this unseen presence, you can consciously protect your thoughts and emotional space, reinforcing boundaries and reducing the mental hold they may attempt to exert even from a distance. Awareness is your tool to reclaim mental freedom and prevent silent manipulation from taking root. Even without direct communication, a narcissist often tests boundaries in subtle psychological ways. They want to see whether the rules you've set, the no-contact boundaries, the limits on interaction, will hold firm or eventually crumble. This testing doesn't require them to reach out. It happens in their mind as they imagine scenarios where you might break your own limits, respond to triggers, or show signs of emotional vulnerability. They watch for patterns, often interpreting your social media activity, mutual connections, or even public behavior as clues to how strong your boundaries are. In their thinking, if you falter or show weakness, it confirms that their influence isn't gone and that control could potentially be regained. On the other hand, if you remain firm, it challenges their sense of dominance, sometimes triggering frustration or obsession. This internal testing also serves their ego. They want to measure your independence and see whether the silence affects you emotionally or psychologically. Even though there's no verbal interaction, this process keeps them mentally engaged and focused on your responses. Recognizing that boundaries are being tested, even in absence, is critical because it highlights the ongoing, subtle attempts at control. By staying aware of this dynamic, you can reinforce your personal limits, avoid giving unintended reactions, and maintain your emotional autonomy. Understanding that silence does not automatically equal freedom helps you stay grounded, ensuring that you are no longer unconsciously participating in the psychological games they continue to play from afar. This healing is often subtle at first. A moment of calm, a flash of relief, or the ability to enjoy life without distraction, but it gradually strengthens, allowing independence and emotional resilience to take root. For the narcissist, recovery takes a different shape. They may confront the limits of their influence and face the discomfort of no longer having control, which can lead to frustration or self-reflection. Even though neither side may openly acknowledge it, both are undergoing transformation. Emotional wounds begin to mend, cognitive obsessions start to fade, and a sense of balance and autonomy emerges. This unseen recovery demonstrates that silence is not mere absence. It is a catalyst for change, a tool for growth, and a reset for unhealthy dynamics. By the end of this period, both individuals are better positioned to make decisions unclouded by manipulation or emotional dependence. The quiet that once felt heavy becomes a space for clarity, healing, and personal evolution. In essence, the period of no contact is when real change happens, preparing both sides to move forward with greater self-awareness and emotional freedom. Eventually, the silence brings a realization that is both subtle and profound. One or both parties begin to move forward emotionally and psychologically. The narcissist, this can be a shock. They may suddenly see that their absence hasn't caused the expected chaos, and in some cases, that the other person is thriving without them. This threatens their sense of control because it proves that their influence was never absolute. For the person reclaiming autonomy, the experience is often liberating. They start making decisions freely, focusing on their own priorities, and rediscovering self-confidence and independence. The absence of contact, which once felt like a void, becomes a space for growth, clarity, and empowerment. Even if the narcissist continues to fantasize about influence or control, their imagined power no longer dictates reality. Both parties gradually disengage from the old patterns, and the emotional intensity that once dominated interactions diminishes. This stage highlights the transformative power of no contact. It ends cycles of manipulation, allows wounds to heal, and creates the conditions for genuine personal freedom. The shock isn't just in the silence itself, it's in recognizing how much life can flourish when the unhealthy dynamics are removed. By maintaining distance and boundaries, one demonstrates resilience, reclaims mental space, and ultimately proves that autonomy and emotional well-being are stronger than control ever was. Silence, in this sense, is not emptiness, it's liberation. So, what does all of this mean for you? Even when there's no contact, a narcissist isn't truly absent. They're still engaged mentally, still measuring, still hoping for something from you. They crave validation, emotional reactions, and the subtle confirmation that they remain important, even if they don't speak a word. They watch, they imagine, and they test boundaries, all from a distance. But here's the crucial truth. Their desires only have power if you allow them to. Silence doesn't automatically mean influence. It only becomes freedom when you understand what's happening behind the scenes. By recognizing their hidden motives, you reclaim control over your thoughts, emotions, and decisions. You can stop giving energy to imagined reactions, stop feeling responsible for their mental games, and focus instead on your own growth, your own boundaries, and your own life. Over time, the anxiety, obsession, and emotional turbulence that once dominated begin to fade. Recovery unfolds quietly but powerfully, and the independence you build becomes a shock to anyone who expected you to remain tethered to their influence. The ultimate lesson is simple but profound. No contact isn't just about walking away. It's about reclaiming your life, protecting your peace, and refusing to participate in manipulation any longer. Silence, when understood and respected, becomes not emptiness, but a force of liberation. And once you embrace it, you realize that your freedom, your clarity, and your self-respect are stronger than any hidden desires could ever be.